Keiyaru was a lonely, miserable bum who was abused by the higher-ups because of his skill. However, everything changes when he acquires a stone that resets the world, so he goes back in time to become the strongest and crack all his enemies. But before this, Keiyaru served the wicked princess, Flare, and her party members as their healer. However, anytime he used his healing power on someone, he downloaded all their experience into his brain, and this caused unimaginable pain, making his head want to explode. When he couldn't bear it anymore, he tried to escape countless times. However, since his power was too valuable, he always got caught and was eventually turned into a junkie by the princess so she could easily manipulate him. And as punishment for trying to escape, he was beaten to a pulp by her party members. During their final mission, Princess Flare and her party engaged in a fierce battle against the Demon Lord, but they got bodied and were left badly injured. However, when the princess called on her lapdog to heal them, Keiyaru smirked like a villain because over the years, he had become immune to the drugs and was no longer under her control. Since he had been waiting for the perfect moment to defeat the Demon Lord himself, Keiyaru used hundreds of S-rank skills that he stole from those he healed and easily obliterated her. As she vanished into thin air, he obtained the Philosopher's Stone, which has the ability to restart the entire world. Seeing the stone in his possession, Flare demanded that he give it to her, but Keiyaru refused, knowing the evil witch intended to use its powers to conquer the world. Instead, he vowed to heal the corrupted world by going back in time before he met her. Princess Flare warned that by doing so, he would lose all his memories, but Keiyaru coldly assured her that even if his memories were erased, he would never forget the pain he suffered at her hands. That said, Keiyaru activated the power of the stone to restart the world, and in the next moment, he went back in time to wake up in a small house. Suddenly, he hears a voice in his head asking him to get stronger. Confused, Keiyaru heads into the woods to clear his head, but while plucking fruits, he hears the same voice instructing him to obtain the sight of the spirits. Before he can figure out what this strange voice is, he suddenly gets possessed by the voice, and as he heads deeper into the woods like a mindless zombie, he soon comes across a river. After he says a special incantation, a green-haired lolly goddess suddenly appears and introduces herself as the Star Spirit. She then asks what he desires, and Keiyaru answers that he wants the Halcyon eyes, which have the ability to see all creation. The goddess agrees to grant his desire, and as she kisses his eye, it instantly turns green, granting him the ability to see her status. With the Halcyon eye now in his possession, Keiyaru regains the hurtful memories of his past life and is locked in to finally get his revenge on the princess and all those who abused him. Several nights later, Keiyaru unlocks his hero status as a healer just as in his previous life, and a divine sigil is burned into his hand as evidence. Since he was drugged in his past life by the princess, he spends the next few days eating every plant containing crack to build his resistance to drugs. Weeks later, Princess Flare and her knights arrive at the village in search of the new hero who has just awakened. Seeing the sigil on Keiyaru's hand, she immediately clocks that he is the hero and invites him to join them. Since this marks the beginning of his revenge, Keiyaru doesn't hesitate to leave his village behind and join her. When they finally arrive at the capital, Keiyaru is presented to the Scarecrow King, who welcomes him and then tells him that his first mission as a healer is to heal the kingdom's sword saint who is currently away on a journey. After leaving the king's presence, Keiyaru is exhausted and tries to get a much-needed shut-eye. But suddenly, a hot mommy maid walks in and immediately pounces on him, demanding he give her a taste of his 6-foot-long hero sausage. Keiyaru doesn't resist, as he also plans to steal her experience anyway. From then on, every night, more freaky maids line up to spread their cheeks, and Keiyaru unleashes his MacDiddy skills on them while stealing their experience. Several days later, the sword saint, Claret, finally returns to the castle, and Keiyaru is brought to heal her. After they both introduce themselves, Keiyaru places his hand over her head, and while trying to heal her, his mind suddenly gets invaded by horrific memories of Claret on a blood-soaked battlefield. This frightens the heck out of him, so after he regenerates Claret's chopped-off hand, he chokes on his own spit. When Claret tries to help him, Princess Flare arrives and orders her to go show the king her healed hand while she deals with the worthless 2-minute healer. However, before Claret leaves, she thanks Keiyaru for healing her and promises to repay his kindness. Immediately after, Flare starts talking smack about Keiyaru for being an incompetent healer who got wasted at his first attempt. The Gandalf mage then tries to explain how remarkable Keiyaru is for regenerating an amputated limb, but Flare thinks his words make no sense. Just like his ugly face, so she orders him to drug Keiyaru so he doesn't faint again. Unbeknownst to the princess, Keiyaru is pretending to be unconscious, and after overhearing her sinister plan, he realizes she is still the same wicked tramp from his previous life. So now, he is even more determined to deal with her mercilessly. Later that day, Keiyaru pretends to be afraid of using his healing power, claiming that doing so drives him mad. The princess then tries to calm him as a friend would, and promises not to force him if he insists on never using his powers again. However, as she leaves the room with the Grand Mage, Keiyaru already knows the princess is merely trying to fool him into believing she cares about him. It was just as she had done in his previous life, but this time, Bro is prepared not to be deceived by her Botox face and lip filler smile. Soon after, a maid brings tea to Keiyaru, explaining that it's a gift from the princess to calm his nerves. Knowing the tea is laced with poison, Keiyaru still takes it and passes out. A few hours later, when he wakes, he finds himself locked in a cell while being beaten like a worthless thief by Renard, the captain of the kingdom's knights, for defying the princess's order. After the intense thrashing, narcotics are then forced down his throat by the vile old mage. Over the following weeks, Keiyaru is subjected to relentless abuse in all the freakiest ways imaginable, and is even diddled by shameless men who need his cheeks to level up their magic. When the princess pays him a visit, she treats him like a filthy dog and even cracks his walnuts for her sadistic enjoyment. Even with all this suffering, Keiyaru is still overworked during the day to heal, but each time he does, he snatches a skill for himself. Over time, Keiyaru continues to play along with the script while patiently waiting for his body to build a tolerance to narcotics, so he can fully regain himself. 6 months pass, and his tolerance eventually builds up. One night, after the princess and the ugly old healer finish drugging him and leave, Keiyaru suddenly regains his mind and remembers that he is a man on a mission. Several days later, he overhears the prison guards gossiping about the king leaving on a trip, so he immediately breaks the chain binding his neck. Then, he unlocks the prison gate using the alchemy skill he stole from one old idiot. Sometime later that night, word spreads that Keiyaru has escaped his cell, and this makes the princess pace anxiously. Suddenly, Renard and his men burst in with Keiyaru, whom they've managed to capture, and then Renard asks to speak with the princess in private. Princess Flare agrees, but as soon as they enter her private chamber, Renard flatlines her 2 guards. Before the princess can attack with her magic, Renard pins her to the wall, rips her plot armor, and then steals her magic. Shocked by his actions, the princess demands to know what has come over him, and that's when Renard suddenly transforms into Keiyaru, revealing that he had stolen Renard's skin while the fool was busy torturing him. With the princess now in the palm of his hands, Keiyaru warns her to prepare herself for 1,000 years of unbearable torment. When the princess tries to beg for her life, Keiyaru reminds her of all the times she fed him drugs like a crack fiend and even kicked his family pouch. The princess is shocked to hear that he remembered all the torture even while drugged, but Keiyaru forcefully grabs her hand and insists they play a game. He starts by asking her 1,000-7, and when she is too slow with the answer, he takes out both her legs with magic, making her grovel like a pig. Then he lets her behold his 9-inch rod, and as he takes out a burning rod from the fireplace, he asks her to choose between his rod or the rod. Scared for her kitty, Flare immediately chooses the option that won't cripple her, so Keiyaru spends the entire night destroying her floodgates. When he is done, he erases her memory, and then changes her face to complete his sweet revenge. The following morning, Keiyaru kidnaps Flare and uses the chaos in the palace to plan his escape. However, before leaving the castle, Keiyaru leaves behind a corpse resembling Flare to fool everyone into believing she's dead. Also, he orchestrated everything to make it appear as though Captain Renard was the culprit. Meanwhile, Keiyaru takes Flare to a rundown motel, where he alters his face with magic to look hotter than the Saja boys. Then he resolves to continue his revenge, and this time it's against the members of Flare's party who once took turns beating him. He also plans to defeat the Demon King as he did in his past life, and to achieve that, he intends to grow stronger. When the princess wakes after passing out, she is confused and has no idea who she is, since her memory is gone. When she asks Keiyaru who he is, he lies that he is her master while she is his filthy slave who satisfies him. To make her believe his lies, he implants the false memory deep into her brain, and she instantly accepts it as truth. He then asks that they do a quickie since it's the only thing she is good at, and Flare agrees. After exhausting her with his massive pack, Flare instantly falls in love with him because of how good his banging skills are and then asks for his name. After Keiyaru introduces himself, she gets all touchy with him, so he hugs her with a smirk on his happy face. The next day, Keiyaru and Flare make arrangements to leave the city. On the way, they see the townspeople gathered around a poster, which catches their attention. The poster bears Renard's image, since he is believed to be the culprit behind the princess's death, and watching the entire town eat the narrative makes Keiyaru smirk with satisfaction. However, just as they are about to leave, Keiyaru suddenly overhears people talking about Norn, the second princess of the kingdom, and this sends shivers down his spine. The reason is that back in his previous life, Princess Norn was the only person who figured that he had regained his senses after years of drug abuse. Due to her sharp perception, Keiyaru dreads ever crossing paths with her, and so he decides to leave the city before she returns. Sometime later, Keiyaru dreams of his past life, when he was still the filthy slave of Princess Flare and her party. All he could think of at that moment in his life was his next dose of crack, so the princess called him a useless filthy dog. That night, Princess Flare uses Keiyaru as her personal plaything and forces him to drink crack juice straight from her divine wet spot. Afterward, Flare shows him no mercy by stepping on his willy nuggets continuously until it cracks. Hours later, as Keiyaru leaves her tent, he is ambushed by Blade, the entitled prima donna of the party, who beats the heck out of him for getting freaky with her beloved princess. She then realized Keiyaru's lips must have tasted the princess cookie jar, so she starts slurping his lips like candy to get a taste of Flare's leftovers. However, she suddenly stops and starts puking because men discuss her, and even worse, she kissed a smelling skunk like Keiyaru. As if that's not enough, when Keiyaru finally makes it to his tent to rest from all the torture, he meets Bullied, the big ditty of the party. Bullied grabs him, and after punching his face, the big loser also gets freaky with him. Back in the present, Keiyaru jolts awake from the horrible nightmare to the sound of Flare shouting his name. The instant his eyes clear from the sleep fog, he pounces on her to compensate her for the torture he just dreamt about. After the smashing session, Keiyaru washes his face in a nearby river and is more determined than ever to get his revenge on the freaky duo, Bullied and Blade. Several days later, Keiyaru and Flare arrive at the nearest city, where they chill at a restaurant to refuel the energy Flare lost from consistent backshots. When Flare tries to drink a cup of water, Keiyaru immediately notices the water is poisoned through his halcyon eyes and warns her not to. He suspects the water source in this city must be contaminated somehow. When Flare asks if the food is also poisoned, Keiyaru explains that the toxin is too weak to survive heat, so the food is safe to eat. With the high concentration of poison in the water, Keiyaru is almost certain the entire town's people will fall sick in about a week's time. Being a sharp guy, he plans on making good use of the disaster to make some quick bucks. That night, in his hotel room, Keiyaru drinks the poisoned water, but because his body can forge antibodies, he synthesizes them into potent vaccines. The next morning, while wandering the streets like a jobless fugitive, Keiyaru and Flare run into an ugly short merchant and his assistant and offer to sell them the vaccines. At first, the merchant, Goldman, doubts the potency of the vaccines, so Keiyaru allows him and his partner to be the guinea pigs, since they are already affected by fever. The instant his assistant drinks it, he feels more energetic than eye show speed after downing 50 bottles of Red Bull. Seeing the miraculous effect on his assistant, the merchant takes a gulp himself, and in an instant, he feels 30 years younger. With this as proof, the merchant then agrees to do business. After showing him a box filled with the vaccines, Keiyaru tells him the price is a gold coin per bottle. The old geezer immediately agrees and tells Keiyaru that he likes the way he does business. After getting paid, Keiyaru and Flare head to the slave trade company to purchase a slave. When they arrive, Flare refuses to accept the idea of buying a slave, insisting that no human should ever be forced to serve another. But Keiyaru looks at her like a clown because the idiot has been doing exactly that all her life. Inside the slave house, Keiyaru and Flare are welcomed by the merchant in charge. When Keiyaru wonders why the dude looks like a rehab addict, the man warns him that buying a slave is pretty expensive these days. However, when Keiyaru drops a sack of gold coins, the dude shuts his poverty-stinking mouth and takes them to where the slaves are. The merchant then asks what kind of slave he wants, and Keiyaru tells him he wants a combat slave, so he takes Keiyaru deeper where combat slaves are kept. However, after using his halcyon eyes to analyze the stats of all the slaves in there, Keiyaru can't find any slave with OP powers. So he tells the rat of a man to stop wasting his time and show him some good stuff. The man agrees but warns that most of the skilled slaves are injured. Keiyaru, however, insists on seeing them as well, so he takes him to a cell where the slaves are suffering from a terminal disease. While scanning the inside of the cell, Keiyaru spots a girl named Setsuna chained deep within the shadows, so he approaches her. Upon closer inspection, he notices that she belongs to the Ice Wolf clan, and for some reason, she is pissed. The merchant then explains that she is a reject who is strong but has reached her limit and can no longer get stronger. As Kaoru gets closer to scan her stats with his halcyon eyes, the beast girl suddenly attacks, but the merchant subdues her by activating the slave collar around her neck. Still, Kaoru gets closer, and after observing her blue eyes, he agrees to buy her. He also promises to let her take revenge on whoever she is angry at if she accepts to come with him, and then he puts her to sleep. After Kaoru makes payment for the slave girl, the sly old merchant excitedly tells him to visit again if he needs another slave from the Wolf clan. Much later, when they return to the hotel, Kaoru takes off Setsuna's slave collar and then heals her. While doing so, his brain gets invaded with memories of her past life. That's when Kaoru learns that Setsuna wants revenge because her entire family was wiped out by humans while she was captured as a slave. After the first phase of the healing, Kaoru remembers the old merchant asking him to visit again if he needs more slaves of the Wolf clan. This makes him realize that soldiers from the kingdom must be consistently attacking the demi-humans and taking them hostage as slaves. For the second phase of the healing, Kaoru takes a bottle of the vaccine and then feeds it to her through the mouth, making Flare a bit jealous. Later that day, Kaoru sells another box full of the vaccines to Goldman and gets paid. After that, they head back to the hotel, where they realize that Setsuna is still asleep. After Kaoru administers the third dose of the vaccine through his filthy mouth, Setsuna eventually wakes, but she angrily smacks him on the face for doing freaky things to her. Immediately, Flare scolds her for being rude to her helper, and then explains to her that Kaoru had not only healed her, but also taken care of her. When Setsuna realizes she can no longer feel any pain in her body, she apologizes to Kaoru for hitting him, and Kaoru tells her it's fine. After introducing himself to Setsuna, Kaoru seeks to have a more private moment with her, so he asks Flare to rub her peaches against the wall outside, and she excitedly obeys. Now, alone, Setsuna tries to escape, so she attacks Kaoru, but Kaoru pins her to the bed and tells her not to bother because he is 100 times stronger than her. He then informs her of an ongoing plot to enslave more of her people by soldiers of the Empire and assures her that with how weak she is, there's no way she can save her people. To explain how weak she is, since she is too dumb to understand, Kaoru pours water into a mug to the brim and then lets it overflow. He explains that she is just like the cup because no matter how hard she trains, she can't get stronger because her vessel is small. However, he promises that he can make the vessel 10 times larger if given the chance. To show he ain't capping, he shows her his hero sigil on his hand, and Setsuna is convinced. She says she is ready to do anything if she can get stronger and protect her village. However, as repayment for making her stronger, Kaoru demands that she reveal her true name to him, which will automatically make her his slave for life, and Setsuna agrees. With that, Kaoru strips and then uses his biological weapon to expand her creamy domain. The following night, Kaoru and the girls arrive at the Wolfkin village. Observing from a distance, they spot soldiers from the Empire and figure the battle is about to start. Just then, some degenerate soldiers start toying with beast girls, and this enrages Setsuna. As she prepares to attack, Kaoru restrains her and asks her to chill, explaining that the soldiers are just trying to lure the wolf people out. Still, the sight of watching her kind get humiliated fills her with rage, so Kaoru promises to thin out the crowd so she can finally get her sweet revenge. Suddenly, the wolf soldiers storm out of the gate in their numbers and charge at the humans. The humans, on the other hand, retaliate by attacking them with arrows and magic. As the battle intensifies, Kaoru reminds Flare of what she has to do, and after putting on a mask for disguise, he announces himself as a member of the Justice League. Immediately, he launches an aerial attack, and with one sword swing, he cuts down a couple of human soldiers. Using the fighting style of the Sword Saint that he stole, Kaoru is able to annihilate hundreds of human soldiers. When he comes face to face with the wolf soldiers, he announces that he came to fight for them on behalf of Setsuna, and the wolves are shocked to hear that Setsuna is alive. Meanwhile, the rest of the human soldiers, seeing Kaoru as a threat, unleash a volley of arrows against him. But just then, Flare, using her magic, summons a terrifying fireball from the firmament of heaven that roasts all the humans. Watching this, Kaoru laughs excitedly as the thrill of watching Flare cook her own people fills him with sadistic joy. With the human soldiers now reduced to almost nothing, Setsuna finally has a chance to exact her revenge, and she mercilessly does so without any care for their lives. After the battle ends, the Wolfkin people hold a great feast, celebrating their unexpected victory over the humans. Later that night, Keiyaru finally locates the source of the city water, and that's when he discovers that the wolf people had placed a dead dragon inside to contaminate the water as an act of revenge. He then asks Setsuna if she wants him to strengthen the poison in the water so more humans can die to satisfy her thirst for revenge, or if she wants him to heal the water. Without thinking much, Setsuna answers that she wants him to heal the water. She explains that even though she wants more humans to die, she doesn't want innocent people suffering. With that, Keiyaru purifies the water, and much later that night, he also purifies the anger inside Setsuna using his long scepter. After the intense purification workout, Setsuna finally reveals her true name to Keiyaru, making her his servant for life. With that accomplished, Keiyaru is itching to move on to the next phase of his plan, which is to find Bullied and Bullet and inflict pain on them. Meanwhile, in the throne room, after the king returns and learns of the princess's death, he decides to free Renard, who now looks like Keiyaru. However, his freedom comes with a price. He must capture the real Keiyaru, and Renard is pleased to finally have his revenge. Several days later, Sword Saint Claret overhears two soldiers gossiping about the kingdom troops who were massacred at the Wolfkin village. However, what catches her attention is the mention of some hero who has a similar fighting style to her. Meanwhile, Keiyaru and his babes head to their usual transaction location to meet Goldman and sell the last consignment of vaccines. On the way, they run into a wretched swine who offers to buy Setsuna for his midnight pleasure for a single piece of gold. But Keiyaru refuses to sell and instead advises the Brokey to use the money to fix his disgusting face. Pissed off by this, the man tries to attack, but Setsuna moves like Jagger to pin him. After checking his memory, Keiyaru realizes that the fool is actually one of the deserters' soldiers who survived the attack on the Wolf Clan village. Annoyed by this revelation, Setsuna gives him a cold and swift death. Shortly afterwards, Keiyaru meets up with Goldman to conduct business as usual. However, this time, Goldman brings hitmen with him to assassinate Keiyaru and the girls if Keiyaru fails to provide the recipe for the vaccine. Unbothered by this, Keiyaru assures Goldman that he is very well capable of John Wicking all his men before he even finishes saying the word Bonnie Blue. However, since Keiyaru sees no need to fight, he agrees to sell the recipe for 500 gold pieces, and the foolish old man immediately jumps at the offer. After finalizing the transaction, Keiyaru and the girls leave 500 times richer than they came. However, Flair isn't happy about it and feels Keiyaru shouldn't have sold the recipe to the crooked merchant. Keiyaru tells her it doesn't matter, explaining that Goldman is the only loser here because he can't even replicate the vaccine without his antibody. Also, he reminds her that since he healed the water source, the illness will die down naturally, so there wouldn't even be a need for a vaccine. All of a sudden, Keiyaru is attacked out of nowhere by Claret, and although he blocks her strike, she manages to nick his face. Seeing how well Keiyaru handled her attack, Claret believes he must be a member of her family, since only a member can possess the gift of a sword saint. She then accuses Keiyaru of being the assassin who unalived thousands of kingdom soldiers who were sent to protect the Wolfkin village. Setsuna tries to tell her that the royal soldiers were actually the enemies and Keiyaru saved them. Flair also explains that the soldiers were trying to sell off members of the villagers as slaves. Still, Claret refuses to believe all they are saying since her brain is running on 2G. She thinks Setsuna and Flair must have suffered brain damage from too much bending their backs for Keiyaru, so she vows to avenge their case also. Not wanting to fight her, Keiyaru suggests she drop her sword and embrace his sword. But Claret refuses, which angers Flair, so she attacks with a massive fireball. To her shock, Claret slices the attack in two and knocks her out cold with the hilt of her sword. After analyzing Claret's abilities, Keiyaru realizes that his girls are no match for the warlord, and it is a battle he must fight on his own. He then orders Setsuna to stand down, and as he attacks, they clash at sonic speed, but the fight is evenly matched. After an intense back and forth, Keiyaru notices a slight opening in her defense, so he capitalizes to shatter her sword, but in response, Claret punches his guts, sending him crashing into the wall. Immediately, Keiyaru heals himself, and Claret is shocked that he has 9 lives like a cat, so she demands to know her opponent's name. Keiyaru replies that she can call him Daddy, but this pisses off Claret, so she charges again. This time, Keiyaru sneak attacks with an aphrodisiac, and the effect activates instantly, making Claret feel slower and ticklish in her hairy area. As she starts panting like a thirsty dog, she stabs her legs to counter the effect of the aphrodisiac, and Keiyaru is impressed by her resilience. Desperate to bring the fight to an end, Keiyaru closes the distance, but Claret chops off his hand, sending his sword flying. To her shock, Keiyaru regenerates his chopped off hand, and before she can react, he places his hand over her face and shows her memories of the country's soldiers abusing the Wolfkin people. The brutality of the sight causes Claret to pass out and brings an end to the fight. Later that night, Keiyaru carries Claret back to his hotel room for her to rest. Before Claret wakes, Keiyaru devises the perfect plan to finally get her on his team, so he tells Flare to activate her acting skills, and she agrees. Keiyaru then heals Claret, and the instant she wakes, she demands to be set free. Ignoring her demand, Keiyaru instead tells her about the evil slave trade going on in the kingdom, but Claret refuses to believe it and thinks he must be Delulu. She insists that the kingdom she serves would never do something so dreadful, so Keiyaru advises her to be more observant when she returns to the capital. Shocked by this, Claret asks if he intends to set her free, and Keiyaru tells her that if he wanted her dead, she would be chilling with the devil in the afterlife already. He then transforms back to his monkey face, and Claret is shocked to see that he is the healer who regenerated her hand months ago. However, she still accuses him of being responsible for the princess's death and vows to chop off his balls as punishment. To prove his innocence, Keiyaru then invites Flare in, and Flare enters the room now rocking her former face. Claret is shocked to see the princess alive, and Flare convinces her further by lying that Keiyaru was actually the one who saved her. She blames Captain Renard for the evil going on at the capital and for trying to silence her when she uncovered it. Flare ate the acting perfectly and left no crumbs, and this convinces Claret to the point that she starts doubting her loyalty to the kingdom. After Flare leaves, Claret apologizes to Keiyaru for ever doubting him and then promises to help him. To make amends for trying to isekai him, Claret suddenly kisses him, and Keiyaru, who isn't one to slack, wastes no time taking her on a one-way ticket to Pound Town. Meanwhile, deep in the outskirts of the capital, slaves are being transported, and Renard is in charge of the expedition while desperately searching for Keiyaru. The following morning, while having breakfast, Claret gets all lovey-dovey with Keiyaru, making Setsuna and Flare jealous, so they give her the bombastic side-eye. Just then, they overhear an announcement in the streets asking for the hero of recovery to surrender peacefully. At the same time, as the announcement is made, villagers from Keiyaru's hometown are paraded through the streets as heretics. A soldier then reveals a bounty poster of Keiyaru, declaring that he is the criminal responsible for murdering the princess. He adds that, according to Captain Renard's decree, anyone with valuable information about Keiyaru will be rewarded. Meanwhile, back in the room, Keiyaru already figured the kingdom is trying to use his people to lure him out. To find out what happened in his village, Keiyaru instructs Claret to travel to his hometown and gather information, and she immediately agrees. At the same time, back at the capital, a soldier reports to Renard that they've not been able to get any information about Keiyaru's whereabouts. This drives Renard mad, and he remembers how the night before he stared in the mirror and hated that he now looks like Keiyaru. Keiyaru's chimpanzee face gives him the ick, and out of anger, he accidentally smears his eyes with a hot rod. As he wheezes in pain, he vows to rip Keiyaru's organs apart if he finds him. Days later, Claret reports to Keiyaru that his village was attacked by the kingdom's soldiers under the pretext that they were all heretics. Although hearing this breaks Keiyaru's heart, he still manages a smile, knowing that the afterlife will be receiving bountiful guests. Having had enough of the madness, Keiyaru puts on his jacket and tells the girls that it's time he faces Renard. After transforming into the soldier Setsuna clapped a while ago, Keiyaru heads into the street where the soldiers are still parading his village people. Using his halcyon eyes, he recognizes a comrade of the soldier he is impersonating and swiftly drags the dude into the hallway. The dude is relieved to see his friend alive, so Keiyaru asks for his help to deliver a letter to Captain Renard, claiming that he knows the whereabouts of the criminal they are hunting. The guy agrees to help, but just as he is about to leave, Keiyaru stops him and asks about the villagers they are parading. The guy explains that they are people from the same village as the criminal who murdered the princess, but then the guy turns into a freak and starts yapping about how much he enjoyed destroying the village. He also mentions how Renard had piped the woman who was like a mother to the criminal and how he enjoyed watching it happen. Hearing this breaks Keiyaru's heart, and once the crazy guy leaves, he remembers Anna, the woman who took care of him back in the village. She was the only one who sacrificed for him without expecting anything in return, and just the thought of her being hurt fills Keiyaru with rage. Later that night, Renard and his men meet with the soldier to ask about Keiyaru's whereabouts. Unaware that Keiyaru is the one disguised as the soldier, Renard continues to demand Keiyaru's whereabouts, even promising to reward the soldier handsomely. To his shock, Keiyaru finally reveals his true face, and as Renard tries to attack, he realizes that he is unable to move. Keiyaru then reveals that he has laced the entire room with neurotoxin to incapacitate them. Then he mocks Renard for wasting his strength searching for him when he is too weak to even confront his shadow. As Renard lashes out like he can really do anything, Keiyaru checks his memories and sees the destruction Renard and his soldiers unleashed on his village. What breaks him the most is watching Anna getting Renard's big black sword, and this hardens Keiyaru's heart to pay Renard back in his own coin. A few hours later, Renard wakes to see that his appearance has been altered again, and this time from bro to hoe. When he demands to know what is going on, Keiyaru explains that he wants him to experience the torture Anna had to go through. However, instead of remorse, Renard starts laughing while proudly recapping the freaky things he did to Anna. But he suddenly stops yapping when he notices 4 creatine freaks above him waiting to spread his cheeks like butter on bread. As Renard starts to panic, Keiyaru says he wants him to experience the pain and fear of the weak. After Keiyaru walks away, the mighty men of valor pounce on Renard to destroy him with their bazookas. Following that, Keiyaru rushes to his village to see dead bodies everywhere. When he kicks down the door to the church, he sees Anna lying unconscious and almost at the brink of death. He immediately tries to heal her, but no matter how many times he spams heal, Anna is already gone. Later that night, Keiyaru is devastated at the loss of the only woman he knew as his mom. Flare and Setsuina then try to comfort him by hugging him, but the gentleman wants another type of comfort, so he pins them to the bed and doesn't let them go until their legs vibrate like a Nokia phone. After satisfying his freaky urges, Keiyaru vows not only to take revenge on his abusers anymore, but on the entire kingdom. Meanwhile, at the castle, Princess Norn is pissed at Renard's failure to capture the criminal who murdered her sister. While having fun with her play toy, she decides to involve Blade and Bullet to track down her sister's murderer, so she can destroy his ugly face and offer his balls to the vultures. Before long, Claret reports to her daddy about an upcoming execution of his village people at the Colosseum. She explains that it's a ploy to lure him out, but Keiyaru still insists on attending the execution to save his people. Claret warns him that the Colosseum is a dangerous place filled with demi-humans and monsters. Still, Keiyaru says he will not chicken out, and saving his people is something he has to do. Seeing his determination, Claret then agrees to help him, but before she leaves, she informs Keiyaru of Norn's presence back at the capital. Hearing this, Keiyaru almost has a heart attack, and he gets an instant flashback of when he first met Norn in his past life. Back then, while being tormented by Flare and the others, Keiyaru decided to play by the script even though the drugs had left his system. He managed to fool everyone except Norn, who noticed the first time she saw him that he was sober. However, instead of snitching on him, she decides to take advantage of the chance to also enjoy what her sister is enjoying. She asks him to wipe her rims with his tongue, and to keep his secrets. Keiyaru agrees, and does it so well she bursts her can open. Back in the present, Keiyaru decides to leave Norn out of his revenge, since she hasn't really done anything to him except fulfill his freaky fantasies. However, he vows not to hold back if she stands in his way. Several days later, Keiyaru attends the execution of his people at the Colosseum. Observing the scene, he notices they are about 40 in number, including the young and elderly. Soon, the announcer begins the execution, and before his village people start dropping like flies, he offers the murderer of the princess one final chance to reveal himself. Not wanting to see his people die like chickens, Keiyaru finally reveals himself in the midst of the crowds. As he leaps inside the arena like Omni-Man, the executioner warns him to surrender and save the lives of his people. But in response, Keiyaru uses his halcyon eye to scan the abilities of the soldiers, and then angrily asks the executioner why he brought such weaklings. Annoyed by his arrogance, the guy orders his soldiers to capture him, but Keiyaru evades their attack effortlessly. Then, with a single touch, he causes their organs to explode. As Keiyaru starts walking towards them like he has plot armor, the soldiers try to attack again, but he vanishes like your hairline, only to appear in front of them. In the next instant, the soldiers explode like fruit bombs, painting the ground red. Keiyaru continues to mock the executioner and his spaghetti soldiers, which makes the guy boil with rage, so he orders his soldiers to start stabbing some of the villagers. The soldiers obey, and the guy warns Keiyaru that the more he resists, the more villagers will die. Even at that, Keiyaru continues to advance, making them wonder if he is normal. Confused by his actions, one soldier thinks he must be high on cheap crack and tries to attack again, but Keiyaru smokes him like it's nothing. Panicking, the executioner quickly orders the soldiers to activate the barrier, and they do so. The barrier possesses the power to drain the life of everyone within it who does not carry the crystal needed to counter its effect. However, this time, the barrier starts draining the life of all those inside who carry the crystals meant to protect them. The reason is that Flare and Setsuna have altered the operation of the barrier inside the control room. As a result, the soldiers start to pop one by one, painting the ground red and horrifying the spectators to the point of wanting to throw up. Figuring the crystal on their necks is the cause, the executor orders the rest of his soldiers to take it off, and as they do, they save themselves for the time being. As Keiyaru continues to advance, the executioner panics and threatens to flatline every one of his people, but Keiyaru tells him to go ahead if he has the guts. Keiyaru also warns that the next soldier to turn his back to stab any villager will be the first to see his maker. His threat makes the soldiers get cold feet, so Keiyaru asks why they are scared of meeting their makers. Suddenly, Keiyaru notices his villagers coughing out blood, and after activating his halcyon eyes, he discovers that they've all been poisoned prior to the execution. This makes him realize that they had planned on unaliving the villagers from the very beginning, and the execution was just a sham. Just then, a holographic projection of Princess Flare appears in the sky, and she addresses her people to prove that she is not dead, as they had been forced to believe. The arena erupts into a frenzy at the sight of their supposedly dead princess. Princess Flare then exposes all the evils the Empire has committed and also explains that the villagers are being executed without just cause. The executioner tries to convince the people that the princess is capping, so Flare sings just like she used to. Just hearing her sing like an angel is enough to convince the people that she is indeed their princess. As the soldiers drop their swords and surrender, the crowd erupts in fury and launches an attack, leading to the executioner being stabbed in the chest. Later that day, Keiyaru manages to save some of his villagers, and to cure the poison in their system, he invites Goldman and even pays him to help look after his people. Goldman is shocked that Keiyaru still reached out to him after he tried to betray him, but Keiyaru tells him his face is too worthless to even consider him an enemy. Much later, Keiyaru and the girls are about to leave the city when Claret shows up to inform him of an expedition that is being planned in the capital. She explains that the expedition is headed to a city called Bronica, and then warns him not to go near that place because the person leading the expedition is none other than Norn. Even with her warning, Keiyaru insists that he must go there, and then asks her to continue feeding him with information like a good girl. On the way to Bronica, Setsuna asks what kind of city it is, and Keiyaru explains that it's the only city where demons and humans coexist. She then asks if the city isn't dangerous, but Keiyaru tells her it isn't, explaining that demons are only misunderstood to be dangerous. But in truth, they are just animals with strong magical powers. With his explanation, Setsuna then concludes that humans are also demons since some have incredible magic powers, and her logic cracks Keiyaru up. As he laughs hard, Setsuna gets confused and asks why he sometimes behaves like a crack addict. Meanwhile, Flare wants to know why they are even headed there since Norn and her armies will be there. Keiyaru then explains it's because there's someone he desperately needs to see, and right after he says this, he has a flashback of the demon king he defeated in his past life. At the capital, the nutcase princess is hyped up about her expedition, convinced that this is her perfect chance to capture her sister's elusive murderer. Later that night, while resting from an exhausting ride, Keiyaru starts another ride, but this time using his chili wipe and a whole lot of waist movement. Hours later, while the girls rest from the heavy creaming session, Keiyaru thinks of how he can lay his hands on some divine armaments. These armaments are created by the gods, and they are the strongest weapons only heroes can master. Mostly, they come in the shape of a gemstone, but after a hero obtains it and forms a pact, they transform into a weapon suitable for the hero. In the entire kingdom, there are only 3 gemstones, and since in his past life Keiyaru had failed to obtain any, in this new life he is determined to snatch all 3 gemstones. The following day, Keiyaru and the girls arrive at the city of Bronica. From the outside, the city looks like every normal city, but inside it's a freak show, as humans and demons coexist together. Keiyaru explains that many years ago, the city was invaded by demons, and instead of the kingdom helping, the city was abandoned. But by some inexplicable twist, the humans and beasts made a pact and found a way to live together rather than destroy each other. While touring the city, Keiyaru and the girls decide to chill in a bar. There, they share a table with a dude and a creepy-looking ogre. While they eat and drink together, the ogre and the dude start yapping about how humans and monsters agreed to coexist. They explain that the reason for their coexistence is simply because of the mutual benefits they share. Just then, the hot monster waitress interrupts, asking if someone else can join their table. Keiyaru tells her he doesn't mind, so Juicy Thighs walks in to sit at their table. As she takes off her cloak, Keiyaru is shocked to see that she is the Demon King from his past life, but in this life she is rocking a black wig. Observing her up close, he realizes that she is much younger, so he figures she isn't yet the Demon King. Just then, Flair laments that, unlike Branica, where monsters are welcomed, her own kingdom continues to treat them with hostility. The ogre then explains that it must be because there are several types of monsters, but then he thankfully mentions that there is only one Demon King who rules over all demons. The dude sitting with them playfully teases that the Demon Lord must be some muscle freak, but Keiyaru tells him that he is sure the Demon King is a cutie. In fact, Keiyaru points at the girl just joining them and announces that she is the Demon King. Amused, the dude and the swole monster burst into mocking laughter that the weak-looking elf girl can ever be the Demon King. But Keiyaru assures them that he has seen the Demon King a long time ago. He explains that the Demon King has silver hair, deep crimson eyes, and sparkling black wings. Hearing this, the monster dude tells Keiyaru to stop capping, explaining that there's no way the Demon King can have deep crimson eyes and black wings. When Keiyaru asks why, he clarifies that black wings are a trait that belongs to the Blackwing tribe, and the current Demon King is currently getting rid of all demons from that tribe. He adds that there is also a huge reward for anyone who captures any member of the said tribe. Shortly afterwards, everyone finishes eating, and the elf girl stands to leave, but Keiyaru stops her and asks for her name. She refuses to tell him and instead warns him to stop interfering in her business if he values his life. But Keiyaru replies that poking into people's business is his side hustle. He then warns her of an impending attack, and before she can even grasp what he is trying to say, Flair and Setsuna defend against a massive fireball heading her direction. Unfortunately, the elf girl gets hit by a paralyzing poison dart, and as she collapses, an ugly minotaur approaches to capture her. As the elf girl struggles to keep her consciousness, Keiyaru asks her to beg for his help. The girl stubbornly refuses until she realizes she is about to pass out, so she silently begs Keiyaru to help her. With that, Keiyaru accepts and tells the minotaur to back off. But the minotaur laughs and asks why in God's name he should obey orders from a useless stickman. Refusing to stand down, the minotaur attacks, but Keiyaru sidesteps and explodes his insides with magic. As Keiyaru and the girls escape with the elf girl, two other minotaurs try to chase after them but shockingly realize they've vanished. On the way to their hideout, Keiyaru heals the girl of the poison in her system. Later on, when they finally arrive at a run-down building, Keiyaru asks Flair and Setsuna to go play with themselves while he has a private conversation with the elf girl, and they obey. Now alone, the elf girl demands to know what the heck Keiyaru wants with her, and Keiyaru tells her that in 4 years' time he met the Demon King, and it was her. The girl thinks he must have hid his head somewhere, since people from her tribe are more like outcasts. So to convince her, Keiyaru shows her his halcyon eyes and also reveals the hero sigil on his hand. Immediately, the elf girl reacts in shock, but Keiyaru calls her by her name, Eve, and then lists all her abilities, which shocks her even more. Keiyaru then tells her that he has no intention of fighting, rather, he would love to see humans and demons coexist. He believes that with her becoming the Demon King, he would achieve his goal, so he offers her a partnership and promises to protect her until she becomes the Demon King. Eve refuses to believe he is sincere, and just as she is about to leave, Keiyaru reminds her that she would have been dead if not for him. He also reminds her that the wings on her back will only get heavier with time. Apparently, the souls of the Blackwing tribe who have all been unalived reside in her wings, seeking vengeance. Moved by his words, Eve cries out that all her allies have been eliminated and there is nothing she can do alone except flee. Keiyaru then promises to stay and protect her, and even offers to help her flatline the current Demon King so she can become the new one. With that, she can now avenge the souls of her people residing in her wings. When Eve asks what he stands to gain by doing all this, Keiyaru tells her that all he wants is the globe of the Demon King. Shocked hearing this, Eve immediately shields her bouncy globes thinking he wants to cup it, but Keiyaru clarifies that he isn't talking about that globe, but the globe he will get by slaughtering the current Demon King. Unable to make a decision at that moment, Eve asks to think about his offer overnight, and Keiyaru agrees. Later that night, Eve is enjoying her much-needed sleep, but she wakes when she suddenly starts hearing rhythmic clapping sounds. To her shock, she sees an OnlyFans scene unfolding right before her eyes and immediately covers her eyes. But Yaru explains that it's their normal routine. As he approaches her, he shows his Omega Glizzy and invites her to join them for a three-way. But Eve gets so frightened by the size of his Mike Longi that she ends up screaming for her mama, so Yaru decides to let her be. The next morning, while having breakfast, Eve still feels shy for interrupting their smashing moment, but Yaru, noticing this, tells her not to stress about it. Flustered, Eve complains that she wasn't expecting him to show his pack out of the blue, so Yaru teases her for being a virgin, which makes her embarrassed. Following that, Yaru asks Eve whether she has decided to let them protect her until the day she ascends as the Demon King. Before she can answer, he reminds her that once she becomes the Demon King, it will set the stage for negotiations with humans. Eve then asks why he is so desperate to end the war between humans and demons, and Yaru explains that the war is just a ploy for the Empire to make profit. He says he is sick of the fact that countless humans and demons lose their lives over a senseless war. Understanding his point, Eve agrees to his offer but warns that her pink hole should never be his endgame. Yaru then tells her not to think too highly of herself, explaining that he would never expose Flare and Setsuna over her peaches that aren't even made of gold. After breakfast, Yaru and Eve share a private moment, during which he asks if she has the ability to control any monsters and if she has one already. Eve confirms that she has a monster of her own, but admits with frustration that she is struggling to take care of it. She explains that it's because she has to undergo some trials before she can tame the beast. Yaru then offers to help her overcome these trials, and when he asks what kind of monster they are talking about, Eve reveals that it's not a monster but a god named Caladrius. Shocked by the revelation, Yaru remembers that Caladrius is a divine bird that has the ability to spread infectious diseases. Just a flap of its wings can destroy an entire country, and the thought of possessing such a divine beast makes Yaru smirk, so he suggests they tame it, but Eve asks if he has lost his senses, explaining that it's a suicide mission. However, Yaru tells her that if she is to stand any chance of defeating the current Demon King, she will need that beast by her side. Eve then agrees, but warns that there are many conditions that must be fulfilled before the trials. When Yaru asks about the conditions, Eve explains that one of them is a journey around the planet. Just then, Flare and Setsuna interrupt their conversation, so Yaru uses the opportunity to announce that he will be leaving the hideout to gather information about the ops who attacked them the day before. Panicking, Eve reminds him that the enemies already know his face. So to solve that, Yaru changes his face again for the 100th time in this anime to now look like a failed Disney actor. Rizzed up by his hot face, Flare and Setsuna immediately cuddle up, begging to smear his face with their clappers, so Yaru promises they will once he is back. Later that day, Yaru returns to the bar where he encountered the beast minotaurs that wanted to capture Eve, only to realize that the place has been completely destroyed. Suddenly, he gets attacked by a minotaur riding a ferocious bull, but he manages to dive out of the way. Yaru wonders how the big guy got to find out about his identity, and just like he is reading his mind, the minotaur reveals that his disgusting smell gave him away. As the minotaur fires at him, Yaru flips in the air like an airbender and stabs the raging bull, causing it to go mad. Later on, when Yaru returns to the hideout, he buys fluffy garments for the girls to help keep them warm, and the girls love it. After recapping how he was attacked by the minotaur, Yaru suggests that Setsuna use her keen sense of smell to track down the whereabouts of the minotaurs. He proposes they attack that night, and everyone agrees to the plan. Later that night, Yaru and Setsuna track the smell of the minotaurs to a hidden spot deep inside the forest. Yaru then attacks their raging bull with an aphrodisiac bomb that makes it go freaky and causes it to diddle one of the minotaurs. The minotaur's scream draws the others in, so Yaru and Setsuna strike with a swift sneak attack, obliterating some and leaving others knocked out cold. After tying up the unconscious minotaurs, Yaru orders Setsuna to erect an ice wall, sealing them inside and ensuring they can never escape. When the minotaurs regain consciousness, they beg for their lives, so Yaru promises to let them go if they truthfully provide an answer to his question. He asks if they are the only ones aware that Eve is a candidate for the Demon King, and the minotaurs confirm that they are. They beg him to let them go, reminding him of his promise, but Yaru calls them April babies. As he walks away, he tells them it's revenge for the destruction of his favorite pub. Also, he informs them that the raging bull on heat is inside too, to clap them till eternity. On the way back to the hideout, Yaru enjoys this revenge mission so much that he laughs like a villain on crack, and this scares Setsuna, making her wonder if she is with the right master. Much later that night, Keiyaru lodges the girls in a decent hotel with a nice bed instead of the rat hole they've been staying in. This excites Flare and Setsuna as they now finally have a soft cushion to collect backshots. However, Eve worries that she will have to stay in the same room with them while they get freaky. Since Keiyaru rented only one room, shyly, she asks Keiyaru to consider giving her a separate room, but the Johnny-sins refuses, insisting that it would be too difficult to protect her if she were apart from him. With no other choice, she then agrees to stay in the room with them, but begs Keiyaru to at least consider her when unleashing his Makanaki skills on his girls. As if right on cue, Flare and Setsuna excitedly tell Keiyaru that they are ready to feel the softness of the bed and the hardness of his sword. Keiyaru agrees, but before starting anything, he advises Eve to use an earbud because the lullaby that night is going to be crazy. The next day, while Keiyaru is purchasing a magic staff for Flare at the weapon shop, he suddenly overhears that soldiers from the capital have entered the city. Immediately, he instructs Flare to return to the inn, while he positions himself atop a high building to observe the unfolding scene. As he scans the entourage of elite soldiers, he notices Princess Norn among them, but what truly unsettles him is the sight of Blade. Just then, Keiyaru notices the presence of one of the 3 powerful assassins in the world named Hawkeye, and this scares him, so he runs off. Even with Hawkeye present, Keiyaru is still determined not to back down on taking his revenge on Blade. The presence of the princess and the capital's soldiers draws everyone's attention, and among the citizens, Blade takes particular interest in a beautiful maiden. So later that night, Blade drugs the girl and takes advantage of her. The next day, Keiyaru and the girls have breakfast at a local restaurant downtown with a merchant named Carmen. While they eat, Keiyaru asks Carmen to give him some money so he can continue splurging on his babes, and in return, he offers him a healing potion and a stamina potion that he made. Seeing how valuable the potions are, Carmen agrees to the deal and also negotiates to have more of the supply. Carmen then gets serious and advises Keiyaru to be careful. When Keiyaru asks why, he reveals that one of his female customers recently got her kitty slapped by the hero of the blade. He further explains that since the hero of the blade is very powerful, the father of the victim is helpless to do anything about it. As a piece of advice, Carmen warns Keiyaru to avoid frequenting the bar near the lord's estate with his girls, cautioning that if he does, they'll end up becoming Blade's toys. Seeing this as his perfect opportunity to get his revenge on Blade, Keiyaru starts considering which of the girls to use as bait. He thinks about using Flare since she is hotter than the rest. However, since Blade used to simp for the princess back in his past life, he quickly figures it might be too risky. Later that night, after cracking the girls, Keiyaru continues to ponder which girl to use as bait. Ultimately, he decides not to use anyone since he can't bear the thought of Blade playing with his toys. The next morning, Keiyaru asks Flare to put some heavy makeup on his face. Flare is deeply confused by his request, making her wonder if her master wants to be Kylie Jenner so badly. So to explain, Keiyaru transforms into a baddie, and the girls gush at how cute he is. After Flare gives him a full-body glow-up, Keiyaru now looks more like a princess in the wrong anime, but the girls are all over him, asking to lick him like a lollipop. Later that evening, Keiyaru, still in his baddie appearance, heads to the bar close to the lord's estate. On his way, he gets ambushed by 3 dirty gooners who want to put their swimmers in him, so he quickly knocks them out. Later, when he arrives at the bar, Keiyaru sits quietly with a glass of Henny, waiting in silence and hoping that Blade will show up as well. Fortunately, Blade walks in, and the instant she sets her cultured eyes on the pretty baddie Keiyaru, she takes the bait like a dog to a bone. She sits with him and asks to drink with him. Keiyaru agrees, and they spend hours gisting and laughing together, downing drink after drink. Keiyaru then complains of feeling tipsy and says he would like to go home, but Blade laces a glass of drink with poison and insists he has one last sip. Knowing what she did, Keiyaru refuses and asks that she drink it instead, and Blade coldly takes a sip, but then she forces the drink down his throat with a naked kiss. The poison then takes effect instantly, and Keiyaru faints. Hours later, as Blade carries an unconscious Keiyaru to her hotel room, she suddenly gets attacked by a man in a cloak, but she sidesteps him, causing the weak fool to trip like a sack of potatoes. After the man regains himself, he accuses Blade of harming his daughter and then charges again. However, this time, Blade uses Keiyaru in her hand as a weapon, tossing him straight at the man. To avoid crashing into the dude, Keiyaru awakens midair and delivers a powerful kick that sends him into a coma. Seeing this, Blade is shocked that Keiyaru is awake even after she drugged him, and with his move just now, she suspects he must be an assassin. She then attacks with her sword in hand, but Keiyaru strikes her in the face, which pisses her off. This time, she activates her sacred Ragnarok, which boosts her strength, and with superior athleticism, Blade catches Keiyaru right in his neck like a Thanksgiving chicken. After squeezing the life out of him, Blade slams Keiyaru to the ground, leaving him knocked out cold. Shortly afterwards, Keiyaru wakes to find himself in a room, but restrained like an actor in 50 Shades of Grey. However, when Blade tries to run her finger into his fun flap, she shockingly realizes that instead of a well, she's packing something harder than a brick. That's when she realizes that her scissors partner is actually a man in disguise. Disgusted by this, Blade almost pukes her intestines out, but while she is at it, Keiyaru uses his alchemy skills to free his chains and then slashes her guts with a poisonous dagger. Keiyaru then mocks her for thinking he is a girl, and to torment her even more, he shows her his massive kitty destroyer. Furious, Blade tries to get her Excalibur so she can chop it off, but Keiyaru stabs her hand with multiple daggers, finally knocking her unconscious. After using his healing powers on Blade, Keiyaru learns that Princess Norn is planning to launch a full-scale search and destroy mission in the city within 3 days. Strangely, knowing this fills him with excitement. A while later, when Blade wakes, she finds herself on a stage and realizes that she is crippled. As she struggles to get her divine weapon, Keiyaru shows up and opens the curtains to the stage. To Blade's horror, the curtains reveal ugly orcs ready to pounce on her. Scared for her life, Blade begs Keiyaru, but Keiyaru tells her it's already too late and then suggests that they play a game. For the rules of the game, Keiyaru explains that the vile orcs are consumed by intense hunger, and at the same time, they crave deep action. Keiyaru then further explains that she can escape being eaten by the orcs only if she continues to flirt with them. He adds that if she can satisfy the monsters till morning without being eaten, then he will gladly let her free. Unable to believe the nightmare, Blade continues to beg, but the orcs pounce on her and starts ball-slapping her cheeks. After they are done, they finally feast on her. With Blade dead, her Ragnarok transforms back to its original gemstone form, and Keiyaru takes it with him. After successfully carrying out his revenge on Blade, the next on his list is Bullied, the big dumb diddler, and Keiyaru is determined to torture him until he wishes he had never been born. The next day, while Keiyaru collects payment from Carmen for a potion he sold, he encounters Hawkeye, who has also come to buy potions. Hawkeye's presence gives Keiyaru cold feet, and what frightens him most is when Hawkeye quickly deduces that he is the alchemist responsible for producing the high-quality potions. Keiyaru tries to attack Hawkeye there, but Hawkeye officially introduces himself and then offers Keiyaru a job to work at the castle as an alchemist. But Keiyaru rejects the offer, claiming that he is just some worthless traveler and wouldn't be of any value to the royal family. Not pushing further with his offer, Hawkeye warns Keiyaru not to ever try making an attempt to attack him again, or he might be forced to make a move. After Hawkeye leaves with the box of potions he purchased, Setsuna admits that she can sense how powerful he is, and his presence makes her tremble. Keiyaru then asks her who she thinks is stronger between him and Hawkeye, and Setsuna replies that when it comes to strength, Keiyaru bests him, but then she pauses afterward. Sensing her hesitation to speak, Keiyaru pats her head and then confesses that he feels he won't be able to beat Hawkeye in combat. Thinking to himself, Keiyaru understands that the biggest challenge right now to getting to Princess Norn will be Hawkeye. Sometime later that night, Keiyaru is bothered by this, and just thinking about Hawkeye's abilities makes him shiver. His sharp eyes, able to anticipate even the slightest twitch of a muscle, and his godlike reflexes in combat are the qualities that make Hawkeye a formidable opponent. To defeat such a god of war, Keiyaru realizes that he will need a divine weapon. In his past life, Flare wielded the staff Varnagard, Blade wielded Ragnarok, while Bullied wielded the blessed Blazer. He was the only hero in the party without a divine weapon, but now, with Blade's gemstone in his hand, Keiyaru is ready to wield one. After activating the gemstone, a voice inside the magic orb recognizes him as the hero of recovery. The voice then asks what he wishes for, and Keiyaru replies that he wishes for devastation and immortality. Right after he says those words, a divine armor known as Gerugius attaches to his hands, and this makes Keiyaru so excited that he bursts out laughing. Feeling more energetic than ever, Keiyaru bursts into the room, and that night he gives Flare and Setsuna the hardest and sweetest ride of their lives. Meanwhile, Eve, who is silently watching, wishes Keiyaru could use her back door even if it's just once, but since she is too shy to express her feelings, she decides to help herself. At the same time, Princess Norn receives word of Blade's disappearance, and even though she is furious about it, she instructs her knights to proceed with the plan. The next day, everyone in the city gathers for an important message from Princess Norn. When she arrives, she announces that the reason for her visit is to liberate the city from demons that are controlling them. She tries to talk them into hating the monsters who have been living peacefully with them for years, but the people will not have it and start to rebel against her. Enraged by their defiance, Norn orders her knights to massacre every demon in sight and to murder any human who stands in their way. The kingdom's knights obey and start causing a bloody rampage all over the city. No one is spared. Monsters and humans alike are murdered just to fulfill the sadistic princess's orders. Meanwhile, Keiyaru watches the ongoing massacre from inside his room, and at first, he chooses not to engage. But all of a sudden, he spots Carmen trying to save a girl, but in the process, the Mr. Nice Guy gets slashed and dies instantly. Enraged by the death of his friend and business associate, Keiyaru activates his sacred armor and claps the knights responsible without even breaking a sweat. After that, he decides not to hold back anymore, and goes on a bloody spree through the city to flatline any knight of the kingdom he encounters. Later that day, a knight rushes into the royal courtroom to report on the success of the monster eradication. However, he also informs Norn of a mysterious swordsman that has decimated almost 80% of the kingdom's soldiers. Norn is shocked to hear this, so she immediately orders the knights to capture this swordsman by all means. Suddenly, a voice erupts in the sky, catching everyone's attention. Turns out the voice is from a hologram projection of Princess Flare, introducing herself as the first princess of the kingdom. Princess Flare announces that she spent a short time in the city, and in those days she saw people and monsters living together happily. She tells the knights that the demons of the city are not the enemies and then asks them to stop the pointless spilling of blood. Meanwhile, Norn, witnessing what's going on, is furious as she realizes that this might mess up her plan. Princess Flare then begs the people to stop fighting but to embrace peace, and touched by her words, the knights drop their weapons and surrender. Seeing that his plans have worked just as he intended, Keiyaru smirks and prepares for his next course of action. Meanwhile, in the courtroom, Norn isn't buying the hologram projection of her sister and feels something isn't right. She knows her sister hates monsters just as much as she does, and simply watching her advocate for them makes her certain that something is fishy. As she confides her suspicions to Hawkeye, Keiyaru overhears everything from just behind the door, and he isn't surprised that Norn is not fooled by the projection. Norn tells Hawkeye that she believes her sister is being manipulated by the mysterious swordsman, and she is certain that this swordsman is the healer of recovery. Suddenly, Keiyaru bursts inside the courtroom, but Hawkeye already senses his presence, so he attacks Keiyaru with arrows, which Keiyaru deflects. Just then, two knights charges at Keiyaru, but he makes a bloody buffet of them. Hawkeye continues to fire arrows at Keiyaru in rapid succession, but Keiyaru manages to deflect them all and even closes the distance enough to clash blades with him. When Keiyaru tries to seize him with his armored hand, Hawkeye leaps away like a fly, narrowly avoiding the trap, and then drives his blade into Keiyaru's gut. As Keiyaru spits out blood, he auto-heals immediately using the power of the sacred armor. Frustrated, Hawkeye charges carelessly this time, and Keiyaru capitalizes on this mistake to finally lay a hand on him, causing Hawkeye to detonate like a biological weapon. With her defenses now gone, Keiyaru punches Norn right in the gut, knocking her unconscious, and then abducts her. A few hours later, Norn wakes to find herself tied up like an animal. When she tries to call for help, Keiyaru tells her it is of no use, as all the soldiers have already returned to the capital. To carry out his revenge for the death of Carmen, Keiyaru slaps Norn multiple times on her smug face and tells her that he will never forgive her. As Norn begs for mercy, Keiyaru assures her that she will also pay for the destruction of his village. To exert his revenge, Keiyaru invites Flare, her sister, to play with Norn all through the night until she destroys her floodgates. Hours later, when they are done, he wipes Norn's memory clean and then alters her face to give her a new identity. Keiyaru also implants a new memory into her brain that makes her fall madly in love with him. The following day, Clyrite visits and is shocked to see that her heartthrob has gotten himself yet another plaything. Seeing how jealous this makes her, Keiyaru kisses her, and throughout that day he plays with his harem, except Eve, who chooses to play with herself. Days later, in the capital, the king hears of the disappearance of his only remaining daughter, so he summons Bullied to find whoever is responsible. However, Keiyaru already predicts the king's action, so he sends the girls away on a mission to find Eve's monster while he faces Bullied alone. Before going for his final revenge mission, Keiyaru visits Carmen's grave to pay his last respects, and to also pay respect to Anna. Following that, he heads to the capital to crush the dirty big gorilla who tormented him and made him suffer in his past life. Meanwhile, in a dark room, Kei Yaru's picture is plastered across the walls, and Bullied is thrilled at the chance to finally meet the cute little man he has been doing freaky things with in his dreams. Comment "I love freaky girls" if you watch this recap to the end, and if you enjoy anime recaps like this, subscribe to the channel and watch this next video.